A full buyer's guide video for the 2013 to 2018 Lexus ES 350. I like these cars because starting with this generation, this is when the ES got properly safe. We saw some decent results from the IIHS crash test results. The vehicle looks more modern. It doesn't look like a 10-year-old car, quite frankly. Keep it nice and clean. You pull up in this, people might even think that it's a new car. I've also personally tested this car, reviewed it, and I do like the way this car drives. It has a more sporty edge to it, if you will. The handling is significantly better than the previous generation ES, while still being relatively comfortable, and it comes with an amazing interior space as well. And most importantly, as we're about to see, this is not a super problematic vehicle at all. So let's get right into it. I'm going to share with you the reliability of this car, the maintenance schedule, some great resources that you can use, and if this car is worth purchasing in today's market with current prices and interest rates. We can even talk about some alternatives towards the end of this video. But for right now, let's get started and talk about reliability. As always, my most favorite resource to use for finding out vehicle issues, problems, recalls, etc. is NHTSA.gov. You come here, you scroll down, you have the complaint section. This is where consumers like you and I would typically write in and talk about the issues that we're having with the car. Scroll over, you got the recall section, and this car did have one recall back in 2015 for an unexpected braking due to the pre-collision system. Obviously, dealerships, they take care of this for free, and I'm sure most ESs on the road have already had this fixed for free on behalf of the dealer. There are no investigations for this car, and the last section is called Manufacturer Communications. This is also known as TSBs, or Technical Service Bulletins. This is where the manufacturer themselves find and report issues with their own product. And we see 277 of these. But make no mistake, I've actually gone through almost all of these, and there's no crazy issues to report, because what you have to keep in mind with these manufacturer communications, or TSBs, is there's a lot of repetition and a lot of frivolous things, like Lexus communicating with their dealerships, telling them best practices on how they should go about fixing or replacing certain parts. And a lot of this is also the manufacturer telling the dealerships that certain TSBs are now obsolete. So you have a lot of that in here as well. And this is why I like to use another resource and website called carcomplaints.com. I like to come to this website because they pretty much take the same information from NHTSA and they compile it in an easier to understand format. They also show you a nice bar graph of which model years tend to have the most amount of problems. I just happen to choose the 2013 model year because this is the first model year of this generation, meaning this is the car that should have the most amount of problems. But as we see, there's nothing too crazy. But there are a few things that stood out to me, like sunroofs exploding and some water leakage coming through. This is why I'm not a huge fan of sunroofs. Apparently a lot of people in the United States, they love them. How do you simultaneously drive and look out of the sunroof? It makes no sense. And even when you're not looking out of it, when you just have the thing open, the sun is literally beaming through and reflecting off of the plastics and the chrome inside of the interior, and now it's blinding you and it's causing more of a distraction. So I was never a fan of sunroofs, but enough ranting about that. Sunroofs, replacing this can cost between $1,000 to $2,000. But we can come over to the TSB section. Again, they've pretty much doubled the number. It's showing 429. But as I already mentioned, it's a lot of repetition and frivolous things. But here on Car Complaints, now you can do Command F, and now you can search throughout this website for various problems. Like you can type in suspension, powertrain, transmission, and honestly, there's no real issues with any of these things according to the TSBs. The only things I really found was the steering wheel tends to lock up and it's difficult to move the car from side to side. I don't know. Not a big issue. You know, that was a TSB for the early model years. There's the classic Bluetooth issues and people not knowing how to properly set that up, and a fluid leak slash fluid seep from the powertrain components. Apparently, that's something that affects almost every Lexus car, but it's a common TSB I'm sure dealerships know how to deal with that, but nothing crazy going on here. You mainly find issues in the complaint section of NHTSA's website. That's where you have people talking about their sunroofs exploding, and one person had an issue where when they turned left, the engine stalled and they lost power. That could be due to an ignition coil. We also had some door lock issues as well, but overall I would say this car is not a crazy problematic vehicle. So those are the two main resources that I like to use, NHTSA and car complaints. We can also use the forums. It's a good thing to use. Just come to Google, type in 2013 Lexus ES350 problems, and a whole bunch of resources and websites pop up, one of which is Club Lexus. Someone's asking about, any issues with the 2013 and up ES350s. Also the ES300H, which I'm not talking about because that's the hybrid. I would rather you avoid the hybrids because it's just more complexity. I want to keep things as simple as possible for someone shopping in the used car market. And almost everyone in the forums is saying that they've had pretty much no problems with their cars. One person said that the 2013 and 2014 cars have some issues with the ventilated seats. They don't work properly, but again, not a big deal. The only other major issue I found with the person was someone with a dead transmission, with a dealership that was giving him a bunch of runarounds, giving him different quotes for spark plugs. Yeah, for whatever reason, his transmission took a dump on him, and the local dealership quoted him $8,000 for a new transmission, around $4,000 for a used one, and a local shop was able to rebuild him a transmission for $3,000. So if your transmission ever takes a dump on you, that's going to be pretty expensive, but perhaps you can even find one in a junkyard, who knows. Again, this might be one of the few cars where I could tell someone to take their chances and buy it without a warranty, but I would still suggest, if possible, find one that's certified pre-owned from a Lexus dealership. That way you'll have 2 years of warranty coverage and maintenance coverage, and that will be a nice little buffer where you can purchase the car, it's covered under warranty for a little while, and you can test and see if the car is not being problematic. But in the next segment, I'm going to talk about maintenance. Okay, if you just Google Lexus ES350 maintenance schedule, a lot of the dealerships themselves, they run a blog post and they do a good job of illustrating to you what needs to be done and what needs to be replaced at each service interval. So the dealer blogs, they're doing a great job. And if you want to see an estimate on how much each of these service intervals might cost you, you can go to repairpal.com or you can go to Kelley Blue Book. Both of these resources will give you an estimate of what you can expect to pay for each of these intervals. But this car is pretty simplistic to where you can probably do a lot of this yourself, and that's a good thing. Next, let's talk about the ES350 market. Okay, I like to come to cargurus.com because they make it really easy to sort the accident vehicles, to get rid of the frame damage, the lemon, and the salvage title. The reason why I filter out those cars is because when the car has an accident, a salvage history, etc., it really lowers the resale value of the car, so I don't want you to be stuck with that. I would rather you buy a car with no accidents and a clean title, because the other problem is a vehicle that's been in an accident and was put back together by a body shop, it'll never be back up to its original OEM standard and specs, so it's always going to be compromised in some way. I would rather you avoid that. But once you get rid of those cars and you do a nationwide search, there was 1,400 cars, but once I filtered everything out, there's only 728 cars left nationwide for 2013 to 2018. The cheapest car is $7,900 with 201,000 miles on it. Obviously, don't buy that one, but I know a lot of people will. The design of this car is pretty modern. When they see that they can get one of these cars with higher mileage, they'll just buff out the headlights, and now they're able to drive around in a relatively new looking car for less than 10 grand. So I know that's going to naturally attract a lot of people, a lot of first-time car buyers, etc. And I don't know, do a test drive yourself, make sure everything is good. What you're going to notice with some of these higher mileage cars is they're probably going to need an alignment, some new brake pads and rotors, because there's most likely going to be some vibrations and shudders and jolts. Most of that can be fixed with an alignment and brake rotor / pad replacement, because I do admit those are some pretty decent prices for this car. But ideally, I would like you to purchase a 2016 model year and up, because that's when they gave it a subtle refresh. It looks even better, it looks even more crisp, and they've also added some more sound deadening materials in 2016 to make the car a little bit quieter. So it's just a higher quality experience. I would rather you purchase that, and I would rather you buy one that's cleaner with lower mileage on it. So once you enter that in 2016 with less than 50K miles, now we're looking at, $24,000, $25,000 vehicles, which, all right, fine. 2013, that's already 10, 11 years old. 2016, that's about 7 to 8 years old now. And you have to keep in mind, you got to pay your title, tag, registration, dealer fees, etc. So you have to add that on top of the prices that you're seeing here. And as we all know, interest rates absolutely suck. So we can go back to the 2013 model years with less than 60, 50,000 miles, and yeah, you can get them for around 20 grand now. But 2013, like I said, that's over a decade old now. And at those ages, you really have to be worried about rust as well. So you have to check underneath the vehicle. That's another thing I don't like about used cars. Interest rates it's probably going to be 10 to 15% on cars like this, even if you go through a credit union. Payments, they're going to be close to $400 a month, even on a 2013 $20,000 ES350. And you got your taxes, insurance, tire replacement costs. You got to keep all of that in mind when you're buying one of these used vehicles and you're financing them. Not to mention, those interest rates suck, but even worse, some banks might not even finance cars this old. I remember there was one bank that said they wouldn't finance a 2016 car because they said it was too old. Yeah, it's not an ideal position to be in. The other thing is, these are pretty much the exact same prices pre-pandemic. So 3-4 years ago, that's what these cars were trading for, these same prices, but back then they were 3 to 4 years newer with less miles. But hey, you want a nice $20,000 car, this is what you're looking at. It is what it is. If you're gonna buy it, it would be ideal if you can pay cash for it, but I understand over 70 to 80% of this country is not able to do that. So you're looking at around $400 a month, probably $600 to $700 a month with insurance, fuel, tires, etc. Is there another way? Well, we can talk about alternatives next. Okay, we saw the prices of a used ES. Honestly, in today's market, you know what I suggest most people to get? A brand new $25,000 Corolla SE sedan. I'm not trying to be facetious. I really think that is the better deal in today's market, because a lot of car dealerships, they will offer you 2 or 3% interest rate if you do a 36-month finance. So you can get that $25,000 car paid off sooner. You can maybe even negotiate a slight discount that would be in your best interest. And a 3 to 4 year old Corolla is pretty much going for over $20,000 anyway. It's also going to get better fuel economy, and you're driving around in a new car as opposed to a 10 or an 8-year-old car. You can take it a step further and you can just buy a base model Nissan Versa with a manual transmission. That way nobody's going to steal it, because first of all, nobody wants a Versa, and second of all, it's a manual, so nobody can drive manuals. That means nobody can steal your car. Plus, that's still brand new. And just to give you some context, a 1995 Corolla used to start at around $13,000. So for $4,000 more, you can get a new Versa that's bigger, safer, faster. It's just better in every way compared to a 1995 Corolla for just $4,000 more after 30 years. So everyone complaining about inflation, well, there you go. You got a Nissan Versa that's brand spanking new, that's beating inflation. I never understood the hatred that Nissan has gotten, because I want you to bring that same negativity and that same energy over to Honda as well, because Hondas used to suck in the early 2000s. Their transmissions would crap out on people as well, but they never got the same scrutiny that Nissan got. And I never understood that double standard and that hypocrisy from the car community. Never made any sense to me, but I digress. So yes, I recommend you just purchasing a new economy car. I really think you're better off with that. The other thing is, well, how much does a new ES350 cost? A new luxury trim level ES350 that's around $51,000, but I did partner with AutoCompanion and he does offer 8% off MSRP, so you can get about $4,000 off of MSRP, and if you lease it, you get an additional $2,000 off, so $6,000 off of MSRP. But you still have to add back in your taxes, titling, dealer fees, etc., probably another $2,000. So effectively you get to walk away with a new $51,000 ES350 luxury for $47,000 out the door. And when you lease the car, well, good news is, as of August 2023, the interest rate on the ES350 luxury lease is very low. 2.5%. Leasing deals, interest rates, incentives, all of that changes month after month. So if you're watching this in the future, these numbers can be drastically different. But as of right now, yeah, 2.5%. It can be almost 0% interest if you do a one-pay lease. So that's great for whoever can afford these payments, around $700 a month. In 3 years, you're going to spend about $25,000. All of that is not quite equity. That $25,000 that you're spending, some of that includes interest and some of that also includes fees and taxes. But over 3 years, you've pretty much built over $20,000 worth of equity in this ES350. And at the end of 3 years, well, you have the option of buying it out for $26,000. This is why a lot of people think that leasing is a waste of money, because you spend $25,000 and you still don't own the car. Whereas if you bought one of these clapped out ES350s, these used ones, you could literally own the car outright in 3 years. But what people need to understand is buying that used ES, especially if you finance it, it can end up being quite costly, because a $20,000 ES that's still going to depreciate in 3 years. Like, you haven't escaped depreciation. It's still going to be worth less. And if you happen to finance the car, well, the way financing works with new or used cars is banks are going to front load the interest, meaning the bank makes sure that they get paid first. So if you finance the car for 60 or 72 months, the first 3 years of that loan, you've made very little equity in the car. The majority of your payments went towards interest. That way, when you stop making payments and they have to repossess the car and they have to auction it off, they've already made their money and their profit. They already got their interest. And when they auction off the car after they repoed it from you, well, that's just icing on the cake for them. So that's why banks make so much money. That's why they're so lucrative. And that's why I've always promoted leasing, especially the new car market. At least lease the car for the first 3 years and then buy it out at the end. Because in the example of this lease, you got over $20,000 worth of equity. If you had financed the same new 2023 ES, in the first 3 years, you probably only have $10,000 worth of equity if you're lucky. And it's this front-loaded interest with financing that causes so many people in the United States and around the world to be underwater in their cars. And you tack on the fact that these are luxury cars and they tank harder than economy cars or pickup trucks, well, you just compounded the issue. Almost nobody has equity in their cars in the first 3 to 4 years. So that keeps people in a negative equity cycle. Plus, if you drive less than the amount of mileage on the lease that you signed up for, you might even have positive equity. I don't think that the used car market is going to be as strong as it is now in the future, but let's just say that it is, and you drive the car maybe only 15,000 miles in 3 years, and the car's worth $30,000, but the residual value is 26, you just made a $4,000 profit. So you just reduced the cost of your lease by $4,000. And these are the things that literally no other car reviewer is ever going to bother to share with you. They don't care, and quite frankly, most of them don't even know about this stuff. And they're definitely not going to talk to you about whole life insurance policies, at least the specially engineered ones, not the trash that you go out and you purchase from State Farm or Allstate, not one of those. The ones that Dave Ramsey yells at everyone for getting. These are specially engineered. This is what most wealthy people use to create cash value, and you can take out loans from those policies, and they have a simple interest attached to their loans. So they can go out and buy one of these used ES cars for $20,000. There is no credit checks. There's none of that. They're using their own money as collateral from their insurance policy, and they're borrowing against the death benefit, and they can buy their cars used and not worry about even paying back the loan. You technically never even have to pay back policy loans from an insurance company. But those are tricks that the wealthy use, and most people, they're not sophisticated enough to understand such concepts, so that's why I never go into too much details about that. But I just want to open up your horizons and your perspective so you know what's possible out there, especially with leasing. I at least want people to understand this concept of leasing, because people for a long time have been lease hacking cars and driving very expensive cars for a low monthly payment, especially with Toyota Tacomas. They would just lease hack that and they would have positive equity left over at the end of their lease. and they would effectively just keep driving new tacos, not worry about repairs, not worry about tire replacement, not worried about creaky, crunchy, clapped out used cars. Eventually they even get paid to drive tacos. So I just want people to be aware of what's really possible if they just think outside of the box and they just learn some of these concepts. But next I want to conclude and I want to share with you one last resource. Okay, we did a pretty in-depth coverage and we talked about some great resources on what you can use to check potential problems with the car through NHTSA and carcomplaints.com. This generation of the ES is very solid. I like driving it, I like the interior, and it's not a problematic machine. It's pretty reliable. One of the few cars where I would suggest not even getting a warranty. I would actually roll the dice on this one. Same thing with the Toyota Avalon of this generation, 2013 to 2023. Those are some great driving cars as well. Pretty much identical in feeling compared to the ES. It just doesn't quite have the same interior quality as the ES. But with current circumstances, high interest rates, high used car prices, most banks not even offering financing on these cars because it's too old. That's what some banks are saying. And not too many certified pre-owned options out there either, because again, it's climbing in age. So it's hard to recommend in today's economy. I would rather most people just get a new Corolla, a new Mazda 3, or a new Nissan Versa with the manual transmission. But if you like this car, you can pay cash for it. Go ahead. I just want to share with you one last resource, and that's Edmunds.com. They do a great job in showing you what's new for every model year, and this is important because now you can see what each new model year has to offer. 2015 was a good year because they enhanced the Mark Levinson audio system, which the ML audio is one of the best in the industry, definitely worth getting in an ES if you can find it. If not, not a big deal, but they upgraded the ML audio to make digital audio tracks sound better. 2016, like I mentioned, the car got a subtle refresh, and they also added some sound deadening materials to make the car a little bit quieter. So I like 2016. 2018 was the last model year and there was no new changes in 2018. So Edmunds.com, great resource. I'll have AutoCompanion's information in the description box as well if you want to purchase a new one at 8% off and lease one with the low interest lease deals that they have going on. I'm also going to have AutoCompanion's free leasing calculator in the description box so you can run your own numbers on whatever car that you want. So hopefully this information was valuable to you, and hopefully now you can kind of see and understand my perspective on how I evaluate car deals and how I evaluate if something is good value or not. And if you appreciate that, make sure to like and subscribe, because this is simply information that no other journalist will ever bother to share with you. I just want to help and edify people and to let you know how car financing, how car leasing and car buying really works. So if you like that, please consider supporting the channel. Thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.